with some heavy metal or the other. So now to make that the causal factor in somebody's ailment or death, we need to be very careful, because the mere presence of a heavy metal, even if it is in unexpected concentrations, we need to be very sure that there is nothing else, no other factor that has come in that has confused the picture a little bit. And here I find, number one, some of the heavy metals tested like cadmium is very unusual. In our panel, we have got a panel. I've been running this toxicology laboratory in my institute for 15 years, more than 15 years. It's an accredited laboratory, perhaps the only accredited clinical toxicology laboratory in the country. So we have been doing heavy metal analysis. You did mention that we do it on our own. Actually, that's not correct. We don't have that kind of sophisticated equipment. So what we do is we get it done in a university setup where they have all the facilities, the real instruments that need to be possessed to do such analysis. We do these kinds of analysis where required under our supervision, and the report is furnished and the interpretation is done by us. That is important because, as I said, heavy metals are very confusing kind of entities, and if somebody does some analysis, he comes with some sort of result, he may likely interpret it wrongly. So here, number one, I am a little surprised as to who picked up cadmium and why. Was there anything in Srila Prabhupada's history, medical history, that suggested that he may be exposed to cadmium? Otherwise, to pick it out of dozens of heavy metals, I find that a little odd. But still, we will say that there may have been something that I don't know of. All right, cadmium has been picked up. Also, I believe arsenic, antimony, and one or two other heavy metals. And some abnormal result was obtained. And that too, we are not talking about body fluid samples, not blood, not urine. We are talking hair sample. So let me come to that also. I know you will have some questions later on to do specifically with that, but just because we have to have a beginning somewhere, hair analysis as a toxicologist, I would say, is way down the list of reliable kinds of analysis in toxicology. Hair analysis had its glory days, 70s, 60s. From about 80s or 90s, a lot of controversies started evolving. How reliable is it? How authentic is it? Is it capable of being replicated, by different set of same sample getting same results? Lot of publications are there. It's not my opinion. So hair analysis in general is shrouded in a bit of controversy today for toxicological purposes. And with regard to heavy metal analysis, it is really under a lot of scrutiny as to how reliable is heavy metal analysis of hair. And if you go to the net, you can do that on your own. You will find a lot of authentic publications. I'm not talking about some websites, created by some organization or some individual for commercial purposes or for other purposes. No, please don't go to such websites. Go to websites which are maybe part of a medical organization or a hospital or something like that, or a university. You will see a lot of publications that indicate hair analysis should not be taken as a routine, number one, in toxicology. And whatever results you get that are abnormal or unexpected, you need to work upon that. You cannot give an opinion on the basis of a single isolated toxicological metal screen. You'll have to get that done at least once more, maybe by a laboratory which did the first time, or preferably by another laboratory, same sample. Don't even mention what you got. Ask that laboratory to analyze and find out what you get. And you'll be surprised that much of the time the results may be completely different, which itself indicates that hair analysis with regard to any kind of toxicant, particularly heavy metals, is something I would be very, very careful before I accept as authentic in a particular case. So in this case also, I would begin by saying that yes, hair analysis was done, but there are a lot of questions that we need to address before we say, and especially as a toxicologist, before I say that yes, there is something in this. I have to start by saying, as of now, I don't think there is anything much in this except confusion and convolution.
Dr. Morris from University of Missouri, he has performed this neutron activation analysis on these hair samples, and the books which have been published based on the report says that the quantity of cadmium were almost 200 times more than the normal level and 40 times more than the maximally published on the hair samples of the people who were exposed to the occupational hazard. So question number one is this neutron activation analysis is a standard or gold standard for carrying out this test? And second, what is the reason of such high level of concentration in Srila Prabhupada's hair?
Interesting. Because number one, neutron activation analysis for the purpose of detecting heavy metals in biological samples is not very common at all. The first reason is of course that it is something which is very expensive, and very few laboratories have got that kind of equipment, which is prohibitively expensive. Requires also people with highly specialized qualifications. It's not easy. I think in India, if I am right, there is only practically one laboratory in Mumbai that is associated with Bhabha Atomic Research Center, BARC, where you can do this kind of analysis. For medical purposes, almost never it is done in India, as far as I know. And I don't think that it is a popular method at all, even in the West, for medical purposes. For research purposes, experimental purposes, that may be different. And with regard to the laboratory that you are mentioning, I think, yes, certainly the laboratory appears to me to be very sound, attached to a university of Missouri, if I am not mistaken. But my question is it a medical setup? I don't think so, because I studied the results, and I find that it is a research laboratory. They have high-end equipment, including neutron activation analysis. And the person who did the analysis, yes, he has got impeccable background. He's a very good analysis, but I don't think he has got a medical background to interpret what he finds in biological samples like hair. I think the proper thing would have been, even if you wanted to do a neutron activation analysis, we'll come to which is the better technique in a while. But even if you wanted to do NAA for heavy metal analysis, the interpretation of the report should not have been done by the analyst unless he were a medical person himself, at least some medical background, even if not a toxicology background, some medical background, so that you know how it is. The interpretation that you make with regard to a non-biological sample with regard to heavy metals may be completely different when it comes to a human being, where you are examining his body fluids or tissues like hair and then interpreting as to whether this has some significance or not. That kind of approach can be undertaken only by a medical person. So I would say, with due apologies, that when somebody says, I have done this kind of analysis, I think you should not say anything further than that, and say that interpretation of what I have found is left to the medical toxicologists. And I am not very sure as to whether medical toxicologists have looked at this case. I have not come across any opinions. There are several medical toxicologists of repute in the US. I am just one humble toxicologist from India. But with my background alone, I can say that that looks very dicey, what has been done and what has been reported. Number one, I told you, I would not opt for neutron activation analysis for especially a sensitive case like this. Gold standard is not NAA today. The gold standard is what is called inductively coupled plasma mass spectrometry, or ICP-MS. There is also a variation called ICP-AES, that is inductively coupled plasma atomic emission spectroscopy. There is also a classical kind of instrumentation called AAS, atomic absorption spectroscopy or spectrometry. These are the instruments that are commonly employed, not only in India, to my knowledge, in most laboratories in the West, not only for clinical but also for forensic purposes. ICP-MS is supposed to be one of the best methods for metal analysis. Now my question is, to begin with, why was that not done here? Why did you go to a very expensive, slightly unusual methodology to detect metals? I am not putting down that method. I am just curious to know,